Hi there, welcome to another video by StudIO. My name is Adam Barnsdorf and I'm the Chief Product Officer here at StudIO and excited to walk you through some of the basic features of our StudFinder Revit plugin. Let's go ahead and get started. You can see in Revit I have a project open in Revit and I have the StudFinder add-in installed. So you'll see what you should see if you've correctly installed it is a ribbon on the top that says StudFinder, and then this panel on the right hand side, which I'm about to introduce you to, may or may not be open. If you do need to open it, if by chance you don't have it open to begin with, you can open it by clicking this StudFinder panel button on the left side of our ribbon at the top. The first thing you're going to need to do when getting started with StudFinder in Revit is going to be signing in. So you should have an account already created online. You can type your email and password and log in. And that it should just take a couple seconds. You'll get a login successful window that you need to click OK on. If you do have multiple screens, just a thing to look at. Make sure it could be in other screens. Real quick to introduce you to the StudFinder side panel. If you're coming from StudFinder Rhino, this is going to be already familiar to you, or if you've used StudFinder in any other integration. If not, this is going to be the way that you interact and understand objects, StudFinder objects inside of whatever modeling platform you're working on. There's a couple tabs to familiarize yourself with. The first being the File tab. This is kind of where you name your current active project. So we can go ahead and name this the StudFinder Office project. You can change this name whatever you want it to do. You can import and export .stud files, which we'll get into towards the end of this video, as well as fabrication files. There's a project browser where you'll see your structures and frames and members that are in your current project. An object properties tab, which will display the properties of whatever object you currently have selected, as well as an assets, which we're not going to get into tab today, and an account settings tab. And really this is the place where you can log in and log out. So if you wanted to log out, you could click that. Or if you want to change the way that we're going to display coloring of StudFinder objects, you can do that in this settings tab here. So if that's not open, you can open that and then change the way you want to color members by. So we're going to leave it at structure for now. We'll get a little more familiar with all of this as we go, but I want to get into how do you start modeling using StudFinder. StudFinder uses a number of tools that are up here in the ribbon to model studs and light gauge framing for fabrication capabilities. So the one primary way inside of the Revit world that we're going to utilize is what we call regions and recipes. A region or a recipe. A region is an object that has kind of a boundary, potentially has openings in it, that we can apply a kind of standard way of framing to it. So if you take this wall, for example, we can get into the first way we can create studs, which is by this Create Wall Region tab. On your main screen there will be a window that says what recipe to select. So this allows you to select walls that are 16 inches on center or 24 inches on center, or if you have a very specific stud you'd like to use, whether it be a 4-inch or a 6-inch stud and what its spacing is. Let's just go ahead with 16 inch on center for now. So before you select any objects, you're going to select what recipe you want to apply to those objects, and then you'll proceed to selecting as many objects that you want. Down here in the bottom left of the screen, there will always be any of our commands will tell you what it's wanting you to do. So this is selecting wall elements for stud generation. We can hit finish. You're allowed to multi-select multiple walls in that process, but in this example we took this wall and we've now drawn studs that are 16 inches on center in the middle of its structural wall. So real quick, if we look at the type properties of this particular wall, inside of its structure we have a gyp on both sides and a metal stud layer in the middle. StudFinder is specifically looking for this structure function and or this structural material checkbox. If neither of those are set in your wall, you will likely get an error, or it will just put the stud kind of in its best guess, which is probably going to be wrong. So as you kind of build your types of walls in Revit, make sure you're setting the metal stud layer, or what layer you want the studs to populate on, to be the structure layer, and you can check the structural material as well. And now we can look at this wall and we can see that that recipe has been applied to this wall. From here, this recipe and this wall is always going to update when that wall updates. So if by chance we grab that wall and we drag it a little smaller, you will see that StudFinder kind of reacts, responds, relays out those studs in a timely fashion. This panel on the side, which kind of shows the one region that we have created, and the studs that are all named there, updates. If we go ahead and we add a door to this wall, our stud recipe should update along with it. So you can see there's a little jump there, that this wall is now updated to what that door is. This also will respond to windows. If we put a window in this element, once you close out of that you'll see now that this kind of studs have reacted. It will also respond to if we edit this profile. So if we take this and we drag that to make the top look like something like this, give it a sloped top, StudFinder should respond to that. So you can see while StudFinder is responding, things are updating in this side panel as we go. If by chance you want to change a recipe of a wall after the fact, you can, in your side panel, you can grab this top region. It says this is a Revit element region of type region. We'll get into this type in a little bit when we get into other structures. But this is an intelligent region, so we can hit edit, right click and click edit, and then it gives you the properties of this particular region. So the recipe can be changed, let's say, to 24 inches on center. If you click update, it will go through and update what that recipe that is applied to this particular wall. If by chance, and you'll kind of see when we zoom in here right now, this is using the appropriate size stud for this particular wall, meaning the stud profile matches that interior structural layer. If by chance we turn this to a 6-inch stud, which means a wall 600 stud, 16 inches on center, and we hit update, you will see that that will no longer match. So this allows that updating kind of. So let's put that back for now, back to 16 inches on center, and go for that. Some of the other commands that you'll get familiar with in StudFinder are creating ceiling regions or floor regions. They're going to work the same way, specifically looking and asking you to select a ceiling element or a floor element for now. Basically, it will take the boundary of that ceiling and of that floor and will apply a recipe to that. So I should be able to quickly populate ceilings and floors. Another way, if we go into massing and I quickly make a mass, we just quickly make a box here. Perfect. We take this box and we like that box. Another way to make regions is by a face. So if you click create face region, it's again going to bring up this very familiar recipe. It's going to ask you what recipe you'd like to use, and then you can hit proceed, and then you can click on whatever planar faces that you want in this particular model, and it will go and frame those for us. So that can be used not just on masses as I'm displaying here, but it could also be used to apply something to the face of a wall or the face of kind of any sort of Revit element. Anywhere where you could like pick the face of an object, you could utilize that. What's important to note right now is the limitation on that create face region is that if I take this mass and I move it, our Revit elements are no longer going to stay tied to that. So you can still go in and modify that element. So you can right click on the region, hit edit, change this recipe to something else, and it will stay as a region and a recipe, but it is not necessarily tied to the face of this particular element. So something to keep in mind as you kind of go. I'm going to delete some of these, which brings up another way to do things is you can remove structures or remove elements either by just clicking on them and hitting delete. You could select them and right click and hit delete as well. So that deleted some stud. Let me delete the first one. You should see this bottom track go away. Yeah, so you can select objects here. You can select whole frames and delete. You can select whole structures and delete them. So if we go back to just our wall that's over here, let's look at this a little bit more. I'm going to actually hide the wall as well as the elements that are there. So this is still tied to that wall. I've just gone in and hidden the wall. That way I can just look at these particular studs. What you'll find is the StudFinder stud member project family responds to detail level as you'd expect. Coarse is going to show just a single line view. This is what we call an analytical axis of our stud members. And then medium and fine will show the three-dimensional view of each particular stud. If we get into how can we modify this region, maybe this recipe didn't give me exactly what I want, but it's very close. Let's say that maybe there is some plumbing intersecting with this particular stud and we need to move it. That is possible by just moving this element. You can just click and move and it should go in and resolve. Note that this no longer says this is a region anymore. So anytime we manually manipulate a region or a stud in a region or really anything in it other than just change its recipe right now, it's going to convert that to a structure, which means we lose the intelligence of it. So if I go in and I look at its properties again, it no longer has a recipe. It no longer allows you to modify what that frame is. All you can really do is modify what the name of this is and its color. So if we wanted to call this wall and make it red and you hit update, it will go in and update that in the project browser to be a wall that is red. All right, moving into manual manipulation. So when you do want to convert a structure or a region to a structure, you can do so by manually manipulating this structure. So if you just copy this stud 10 inches over, it will add that stud and it will convert this region from a region to a structure, and this no longer has any of the intelligence of regions and recipes at this point in time. So this is kind of a one-way street right now. You can only convert from a region to a structure, but we can't convert a structure back to a region. And manual manipulation will force this. So you can see you can copy studs over and it will add it to the project browser and make sure everything is fabrication ready. When you go in and copy a stud, especially with a sloped roof, let's say, you're going to have to go then and extend it. You can do that by grabbing the extension command and grabbing the stud and getting out of that. StudFinder will go pull this stud back to the appropriate length for fabrication. You can also go ahead and drag studs and they will update. You can delete studs you can trim and extend multiple studs. So if we look at this thing in elevation, and let's just say we're going to pull this thing down 8 inches, we can go through in the Modify tab and trim and extend multiple of these studs. So you can use that as you would with other elements. And what you'll see happens is StudFinder will bring this back, go through each individual stud, make sure it's fabrication ready, and do that. You can extend it obviously like we've shown before. You can also align studs. So if you want to take this particular stud, like let's just say that we drew a model line. Let me go to an elevation view so I can look at that. All right, so we're in an elevation view now of this particular wall that we're playing with. And you can draw like a detail line, and you can align your stud to that element, and then go through and extend it to the top plate. If you want it in a very specific spot, or you want it aligned to something in the background, you can do that. You can mirror so any studs. So let's just say you wanted to mirror both of these studs about like a picked line. So you can pick that line and it will mirror it. Again, you'll see that it will try and solve for fabrication for those 2 studs. Similarly, you can take those 2 studs and mirror it by drawing your own line. So you can draw that line over there, and it will go through and do that. Right now, StudFinder won't go through and make sure 2 studs are clashing, so you can see the result of that mirror is 2 studs clashing, so you do kind of have to keep an eye out on that. Regions will do some of that intelligently and prevent that from happening. So I believe that goes through most of the manual manipulation that we are currently allowing inside of StudFinder, with StudFinder elements specifically. Those can all be accessed via the Modify tab. You can also, maybe one last thing that we can do is we can add members to StudFinder. Rather than drawing them using the Structural tab and drawing a beam, we have this Add Member command that will say select the member of the structure that you want to add this stud to. You can pick the current plane. It works a little bit better in 3-dimensional view. So, one key to adding studs is we like to do it in coarse mode so you can see kind of the axes. And remember that axes is right down the center of the web. So if you go in and you add a member and you click on that stud, if you enable this 3D snapping, you can go from stud to stud. And you can see that new stud shows up in our database there. And if we go back to medium mode, that stud shows up. I think that error was due to this kind of stud being right there as well. Play around with adding, removing, flipping studs. You should be able to copy studs, move them, mirror them, trim and extend them, all sorts of kind of manual manipulation. So that's the kind of first way to model structures inside of StudFinder in Revit, is starting from a Revit-based element like a wall, ceiling, a face, or a floor, and going to a structure and then kind of manipulating it as you need manually. Another way that we're kind of exploring, and I think is going to be powerful for drawing soffits or other things in 3D or jigs, is by manually creating structures starting with a model line. So if I just go and draw a couple model lines quickly to show this. So you got to start with 2 model lines, and we're going to use this create structure command. A couple rules when starting with this to keep in mind is you do have to have more than one stud to begin with, and they must intersect. So they must create a connection. Therefore, that way StudFinder understands what way you want to kind of utilize these studs. So if we create a structure, we can select both of those two model lines, and you can hit finish. And now you'll see there's two studs that show up in a particular structure on the right hand side. So this didn't start as a region or utilizing recipe. We're just able to kind of draw studs quickly this way. I'm going to remove those model lines real quick so we don't have to copy those around. And from here, same deal. You can take this structure and you could copy it around. That will allow you to now have two frames inside of this one structure on the right hand side. You can, again, turn on course mode and add members to that stud. And we add it snap by snapping. What you should see when we go back is now we're able to start working with fabrication in three-dimensional elements. So you got two frames connected by a stud that is handshaked to those two frames. If by chance you want to change the normal or the way that these things work, so let's say you want these two to handshake, you can take this object in the Object Properties tab. You can, rather than its normal being defined by kind of this XYZ value, you can set this to what you want it to be. So think of this as a vector with coordinates X, Y, and Z. So if we want this to handshake or force this to handshake, we can go 0, 0, 1. So this vector is now pointing up, basically to the top. And if you hit update, StudFinder will go through and solve that. And in order to do that, it forced these three studs to dimple connect together, and then this stud to this stud had to also move to handshaking. So we can continue to add members now, again, to this structure. You can add, members that dimple there. You could go back and change this thing to be equal to, should be able to, go in, change that back to a dimple connection by modifying its member type, or its member guy normal. You can change this particular member type in the object properties by picking something else. So right now this is like the Autodesk Technology Center machine. If we go to a machine that's kind of a little bit different, let's pick a 6-inch machine. You can update that. And you can see that that updates. Must be something wrong with that one machine. But you can kind of go through and kind of select different member types, and it will update. And what's cool about this is that these other studs are going to respond. They're going to extend so that they can get alignment between these. Currently, we're not able to support operations. It's something that, in visualizing of operations, they're all being calculated in the background. You just can't see them. So if we exported this and then brought it into Rhino, you would be able to see it there. If we look at this office project that I have included in this model, you'll see that there are a few different wall types. There's some ceiling differences in here, and we can quickly go through and frame these elements using StudFinder. So maybe this is a quick demonstration of kind of tying up all the loose ends of the skills we learned today. And what we can do first is select all these elements, all these exterior walls. They have, I've set these up to utilize 6-inch studs. So if I go through and I select all instances in an entire project, and I go through and I create a wall region, All right, so if we look over at this little example office project that we've built, we can kind of use a bunch of StudFinder features together to kind of go quickly and iterate through and frame this out. We have a few different wall types in here that are going to use 6-inch, 4-inch, and 3 5/8 inch different studs. We have a ceiling that we'll frame out as well. So, we can go quickly and kind of demonstrate how fast we can apply different recipes to different wall types, and kind of show the power of framing using StudFinder quickly. If we go and create a wall region, it's going to ask for a recipe. Let's start with these exterior walls. They require a 6-inch stud, based on knowing the wall type that's being used there. We can use wall 600, which is a 600 stud, 16 inches on center. Select all of the exterior walls and hit finish. And the StudFinder should go through and frame all of those, and you'll see them populate here. If we look closely at a floor plan, you'll see that StudFinder is following the way that Revit cleans up walls. So if we select this wall, you can see that its core or steel stud core layer kind of extends past this one, and then this one butts into it. So StudFinder leverages some of the tools that Revit is doing. So hopefully you're already setting this to be whatever is necessary for you, and you can kind of use these to kind of follow along and kind of change that. If you did want this to be the opposite direction for some reason, you can use this wall join tool that's built into Revit. Hit next, give it the opposite. Hit enter, get out of the command by hitting escape a couple times, and StudFinder will refresh and kind of move this one back. So you'll see this happen in a second here. There it goes. So StudFinder will kind of address and pull those studs back to how it needs to be. Moving along, let's grab the 4-inch studs. So if we use it the same way, so select all instances in entire project, go to StudFinder tab, say create wall region, select the recipe that we want to use. So let's use a 400 stud, 16 inches on center with a truss header for these. Let's just say for some reason we need to use truss headers over those doors. We'll hit proceed. StudFinder should go through and add those, follow those in those recipes. So if we zoom in to that, you can see truss headers over those doors. We zoom back out, we can go through and grab these other partition walls and create a wall region for those with a different recipe. Let's say these are 16 inches on center. This standard wall recipe, or 24 inches on center, is going to use 3 5/8 inch studs, which match these wall types. And then last but not least, let's frame out these ceilings. So if we go through and we can select these, let's say that they need to be 24 inches on center. Wall basically just means that these need to be, these are basically studs that are linear or parallel that are 24 inches on center. So we can use a wall recipe on a ceiling. We could, if for some reason ceilings needed a slightly different recipe, we could write a separate recipe for those. So let's grab those two ceilings, hit finish, and it will go through and put studs in the correct spot for those two ceilings. So there they go. So you'll see that there, if we look at the structure of this ceiling, by looking at its type, StudFinder has looked for, again, this structure core boundary layer and put a stud there on it. So that's our quick overview of StudFinder, utilizing regions and a little bit of manual manipulation, as well as starting from scratch using model lines. All right, let's say that we are now done with our project. We're happy with this and we want to start exporting, let's say either to fabrication or just we want to archive something. I want to talk through some of the quick export options and maybe even import here as we go through this. So on this File tab on the StudFinder side panel, you can update your project name to say Office. You can export a .stud file to the right place. So if we go to the correct place here, and we'll make an export folder. It needs you to select the folder, so you can select that folder and it will export a .stud. A .stud file is really useful for either going between different software that StudFinder is integrated in. So this will serialize your project and then allow you to save it. But it's also really good for archiving. So let's just say you are going to fabrication for this building today that we've designed. You can go and export that stud file and at any point in time come back to the exact state that you went and exported fabrication files with. So that stud file just kind of looks as a standard text file that StudFinder can read back into any of our software. So good for going between software. Another thing you can do is go to export fabrication files. It'll bring up a window like this. That basically shows all the structures in your particular project and all the frames. So if you wanted to just export the first three, you can go ahead and hit export and then select the folder again that you want to export to, and it will write CSV for that particular machine. So you can see that it exported a stud and a track, different CSV, as well as a schedule going there for those particular structures. So that's exporting fabrication files. All right, I think that gives you a basic rundown of how to utilize StudFinder inside of Revit. So if you have any questions as you go or feature requests, we're really excited to get this in the hands of users using this inside of Revit and get feedback, make improvements, get it back out to users and show them all the things that we think that StudFinder can do for them inside of Revit. So until next time, we look forward to hearing your feedback. Feel free to leave it in the comments or on our community forum, which I'll put a link in the description below. And we look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you.